Thank you very much, Team JNU, who has given me the opportunity to speak about the Indo-China relations and the troubles we are having recently. Before I go to the major issues that have been asked to me, you people have requested to talk about, I would like to go into history. And before that, I would like to locate the problem where we stand, what kind of issues in 21st century we are facing today. See, in 19th century, we had a great debate, and then there was a nation-state movement throughout Europe. And this movement was primarily based on the issues of ethnicity, culture, history, and states were formed, states were raised on the basis of these cultural and ethnic bases. So 20th century again we followed, the third world followed the Western discourse of the making of the nations. And very recently, one important volume, Francis Fukuyama, has published in 2018, Identity, in which he speaks about the issues of identity and nationalities, and how he tries to clarify what is identity. He tries to take a psychological base of the identity. I won't go into that because that will be a kind of distraction from our topic right now. He says that in the post 2008, especially in the post 2000 9/11 event, and then the economic regression that we had in 2008, world has been facing some serious identity problems. We all know that the anti-immigrant movements in Europe and United States are on the front, and people are disturbed with these events. They have damaged the economic dimension and the social dimensions of lives throughout the continents. And this has resulted in the one famous quote is that when nations suffer at domestic level on front of the identity and legitimacy issues, they assert on borders, and this is happening now. This Chinese assertion over the borders is one reflection of that. I will come to it later. So how we place the India-China relationships and these two old civilizational identities in this locale of the 21st century. Before I go into the current fiasco that we are having at the border standoff between India and China, I would like to go to the history which has given birth to these events, and which is causative of the current development. India and China, civilizationally, the two oldest ones, the two oldest entities, and in the past they have coexisted and co-traveled well over the millenniums. These civilizations were never confronted with each other. We were having cultural relations, we were having educational relations. We all know that the Chinese students used to come to Nalanda University, Takshila, and Chinese visitors, Hyun Sang and Fahyan, also speak about that. So there was never a kind of border or territorial dispute between the two civilizations. This is just recent. I will come to it later. So let me begin with what is the bone of contention between the two entities is the status of Tibet. Tibet is today, as we know, that it has been occupied by China in 1950, but before that it was a vassal state. And in international law, vassal states are not considered the part of sovereign states who have a sway over that vassal. And international law quite clearly defines a vassal state akin to a protectorate kind of state. For example, Bhutan, we are having a protectorate state, but Bhutan is internally autonomous and they enjoy all kind of sovereign rights, except few arrangements on defense front. So the existence of Tibet that was occupied by China in 1950, it was the major issue that unsettled the relations between the two entities. Otherwise, it had nothing to do with the bilateral confrontationist politics that we are into it right now. Uh, Before coming to the latest things, I would like to tell that the Chinese claim over Tibet is belong to the 13th century Chinese control over Tibet. Before that, Tibet was an independent entity, and one Yuan dynasty that ruled over Tibet. After that, they seek legitimacy since China has China has ruled over Tibet for centuries, so it has a legitimate right over Tibet. But then, if we take this logic, then China was governed for a long time. It was ruled by Mongolians, and Tibet was ruled, in fact, by Nepal also. So these two states can also raise legitimate rights over the territories of Tibet, but in modern international law, these old historical claims can't be consolidated. It is just a matter of how China has dealt the things against the wishes of international community. Uh, then the next development measure in respect of Tibet, I would say that our current border dispute derives is about the existence of LAC. LAC is a term which has a perceptional variations between the two states. For China, it is based on McDonald line, which was drawn and proposed to China in 1899 by British, and till 1959, China kept silent over it. Only after this, they have asserted over the advanced territories beyond this McDonald line to the south of the this McDonald line, which India otherwise claims to be part of it. Indian claim is based on Johnson line. Johnson was an official with the British government in Archaeological Survey of India. He drew a line in 1865 and he visited the area, and to the north of Karakoram and certain ranges, he forwarded a boundary to the British government, and that boundary proposal was remained pending till 30 years with the Britishers, but it was never approved till 1899 when this second proposal was given by McIntyre MacDonald. This is called McIntyre MacDonald boundary, and this was, although not approved by China, but till 1959, China stuck up to this line. It was only in 1959 that Chou En-lai wrote a letter when we were having border skirmishes with China. China was advancing to the south of the actual LAC claimed by India. India claimed the LAC as per the Johnson's dictates. It has one history behind. In 1941, when Russian battalions landed in Xinjiang district, they garrisoned Xinjiang area in 1941. Then actually it was, if we go into the history, the Indian subcontinental contention was between the Britishers and the Soviets. So it was a kind of war between the liberal West and the communist Russia. So when Russian forces landed in Xinjiang in 1941, then consequently Britishers found it quite. They were skeptical about the Russian design, so they advanced from this McDonald line to the Johnson line, which was far advanced in Ladakh. Johnson line gives oxygen to India. If we take the Johnson line, if you will go through the map, this is not possible pictorially right now. You will find that Johnson line that was drawn by Johnson in 1865, and that India claims to be the actual line. It was somewhere around. It covers whole of the Aksai chain, and Aksai chain falls in Indian territory. But since Britishers agreed with China in 1899 with the McDonald proposal, which was quite south to the Johnson line, and that left Aksai territories, not whole of Aksai but lots of Aksai territories with China. So there was a huge perceptional difference. India follows the Johnson line, and China was following this McDonald line till 1959, when Chao En-lai wrote a letter to Jawaharlal Nehru, and he told clearly, since we had border standoffs at that time, even violence took place in 1959, and then that letter makes it crystal clear that uh, the China drew a new map in the Ladakh area, and that was quite southeast to the. They entered far into the Ladakhian territory, and that was not acceptable. And Nehru rejected that proposal. And it was in the aftermath of this development that Nehru went for the uh, forward policy, and that was even against the wishes of General Karyappa, who told him that we have not built up so much infrastructure there, and it is not possible for Indian forces. We are not well equipped as vis-a-vis the Chinese forces, so it is not possible to combat Chinese on equal footing. But then he insisted, and now before the 1962 debacle, what happened in Ladakh actually, sometimes we people are into the debates that since current government is dealing with the issue, why to talk of the past? See, whenever we discuss a issue, any kind of issue in social science research, we apply historical research. We have to see the roots. We have to see the genesis of the issue. We have to go through what has gone wrong in the past that misdirected the things, and that happened in case of India-China relations also, which were otherwise they were the co-seller. They were never combatant in the past. It was just because of Tibet that these kind of relations have developed. Uh, Nehru government, who simultaneously he held the Foreign Affairs Department. His foreign policy was little bit over idealistic, and it had inbuilt, I would say, dichotomies. Since on one front he went for Panchsheel with China, and Panchsheel was signed only for 8 years. Why not 25 years? Why not 30 years? It was on China's insistence that they went for 8 years term of Panchsheel, and it was signed in 1954. That made it mandatory for the two parties not to infringe with the borders of the sovereign states. So China waited till 1962. Even before that, in 1955, And from 1951 to 1956, the story is different in Aksai Chin. They kept on intruding into our borders. Hundreds of thousands of intrusions were there. And when the Panchshel period ends in 1962, they went for their individual determination of the territories, and they wanted to impose their opinion of the territory, which was against the Johnson line, which was far beyond the Macdonald line, which China had been following till 1959. So it is quite strange. And if we take the first decade, which was quite crucial for the founding of Indo-China relations or India's relations, since India was a new entrant into global community as a sovereign state, so it was a very foundational time of the state to establish foreign relations, to look for betterment of the people of India, to look for the betterment of the economy, to look for the betterment of the post Cold War scenario of the world. So what happens that Pakistan and India were inimical brothers. They were posed against each other after the partition, and they hadn't scope for mutual cooperation against the adversaries, but still something strange goes in between. In 1950, when China occupies Tibet, the government of India was having its consulate at Lhasa. It was withdrawn, and quite optimistically and idealistically, the whole of Tibet was thrown out as territory of China. By recognition, we meant that we accept the Chinese sovereignty over Tibet. This was the most crucial time. It was the time when the government could have talked about the Johnson line, the Macdonald line, and some of them would have been finalized at that stage. But we lost the leverage because of the mismanagement of the government at that time. And China didn't intrude into Indian territories first. They were skeptical about the borders around the Ladakh. But the Chinese first intrusions occur in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. They intruded into Pakistan and into Hunja areas. And sources say that in Hunja also, Chinese they tried to convince the king of Hunja to go independent, just like Hari Singh did in Jammu and Kashmir. But the king sided with Pakistan. He signed the instrument of accession in favor of Pakistan. So there was Chinese interest in Hunja territory. It is later on it was verified when China and Pakistan were having good friendly relations. A big territory around the Raksham area, 3,500 kilometers. A huge chunk of the territory was transferred to China. So they were having designs over the Karakoram, and that was the strategic significance that China understood at that time, and Pakistan understood at that time, but the Indian leadership failed to understand, and they went to the extent of saying that when asked in parliament that why did you accept the Chinese occupation and past recognition, and even about Aksai Chin area where Chinese intrusions were taking place, when Nehru remarked that not even a blade of grass grows there. So these are the things of the past, but how insensitive we were towards the territories which are so strategically significant today. These are the gross mistakes which have been made in the past. Now I would come to two more things here. I would like to discuss that since Pakistan was intruded and they felt insecure from northern front from China. They entered into military agreements with the West, CENTO, and certain other agreements for the protection of its territory. They understood the reality and they understood the scare from the north. But India was sticking to the non-aligned movement. We wanted peace with everyone, good in ideas, but practically what happened in 1962, that was the biggest failure of the Indian stand. Ayub Khan in 1959, when China intruded into Indian territories and we had skirmishes in border, he offered a joint defense union with India also. Pakistani governments we have developed a wrong narrative about Pakistan. We haven't actually understood the internal dynamics of Pakistan and their reliance on the external forces on the basis of which they have been trying to secure security and military equipment for their defense, and they have been ensuring security for the Pakistani state. Ayub Khan in 1959 offered a joint defense union with the um India, and Nehru refused on account of two reasons. Since we were having Panchsheel, we were not we were least scared of China that China will go against Panchsheel, and that's why they waited till 1962, 8 years after the signing of the Panchsheel, since the term was up to 8 years. So India rejected that since we had signed Panchsheel with China, and also since Pakistan had entered into military alliance, security alliance of the West, and India was following a non-alignment line, so it was against the political philosophy of India. So these were the even Khrushchev in 1959. He snubbed Chinese leadership and even refused to shake hand with Mao, telling him that you have betrayed India, you have betrayed Nehru in respect of India. And after that, even Russia-Chinese relations also faced a low in the coming time. So these are the things which have given the birth to the current border standoff between India and China. And now, if I come to one more thing, I would like to mention here that what has accentuated the process of Chinese inimicism, Chinese adversity towards India or Chinese. They have been incrementally expanding over the years, over the borders, and they have been counting these intrusions into Indian territories for years. Even if you take the term between 2010 to 2008, the previous UPA government's time, I was coming across certain news that they had more than 600 intrusions into Indian territories. So this has become the habit. They are into inching forward policy. They move two steps ahead, and when someone opposes, they move one step behind. Even today, if you must have gone through the newspapers and found that in Depang Valley, they have intruded quite a lot, 15, 16 kilometers into the LAC area, Indian perceived area. So these kind of activities they have been conducting for years. That this has been their political strategy and diplomatic way of expanding and the politics of dragon. Now, I would come to the current fiasco. What I'm missing here, yes, one important intervention was there between India and China relations. We didn't see it with that particular perspective. When India last year in August, we abrogated Article 370, and then with the subsequent order, we declared Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir to separate union territories. And the new map of the government of India was released on 31st of October 2019. That map had certain implications for China. India has done well by telling the world that Pak occupied Kashmir belongs to India, and we have shown the Chillas and Gilgit and Gilgit Bizarat and northwestern frontier, northwestern tribal areas in Indian map as part of Ladakh. And another dimension that is there is that in the previous maps, if you would have noticed, we used to write People's Republic of China, but this time People's Republic of China has been written in the area of the Xinjiang district, and in the area of Tibet, Tibet has been written. So there is Chinese perceptions, and there are several conjectures over this stance of India, where Chinese believe that India has, and even in Parliament also, Home Minister Amit Shah told crystal clear to the members that when we were having a discussion over the new map and the application of Article 370, he told that the whole of Aksai chain belongs to India, and we will fight for it. So China is having the view since then that India has designs over Aksai chain, and the another significant thing associated with Aksai chain is the China-Pakistan economic corridor. The economic corridor, since in the South China Sea, China is having lots of problems. China is having problem with almost every state. They have developed, wrongly developed Spratly Islands to go for economic zones and territorial waters under international law. So this strategy of theirs is not working. They have evoked lots of anguish and enmity of the neighbors. So China is not having smooth waters in South China Sea, and the development of Indo-Pacific counter in parallel to OPEC, uh, then this the evolution of this new organization has implications, lots of implications. United States and the simultaneous development of Quad, which had been which had gone into silence for some years since it was founded somewhere in 2006 or 7. But in 2016, again, the four states met, and we went for the revival of it, and the simultaneous will of the states who are engaged in South China Sea to re-energize certain other sources and engage India in the activities of South China area. So they have gone for Indo-Pacific so that more states could be included. And the Chinese string of pearl, that was an old policy, BRI policy devised by China to control the Indian Ocean rim states, and especially to contain India, is going to be foiled. So Indo-Pacific and APEC, these are the APEC is losing, in fact, centrality after the idea of Indo-Pacific, and how strongly United States and Japan and Australia have been talking about Indo-Pacific. So even Australia has opened a new portfolio in its government on the name of Indo-Pacific. It is so serious. India is also having understanding with Australia over the occupation of certain islands Coros Islands, for example. Very soon we can have signature over that, which could be used militarily by the government of India to in its bid of containing China, as China has been behaving on Indian borders. So now I would come to our the primary issue, which was uh, the Galvan episode. Galvan episode, see, the since I told you that the Indian and the Chinese perceptions of the borders, the LOC border, actually, if we say that in India, between India and China, there exists no border, that would be more appropriate. We don't have any border. These are only the points which have been settled in bilateral meetings by military officers and government of India, and certain things were agreed upon by in 1993 and 96 peace and tranquility agreement by the two states. But still the perceptions differ. India wants to go up to the real line, the advanced boundary line of that India claims that rests on the Johnson Line that was finalized by Britishers in 1941. While the Chinese they stick up to the McCartney-MacDonald line, which was proposed in 1899. But then they went beyond this line in 1959 when Chau En-lai, as I told you, he wrote to Nehru that the actual where the actual the Chinese perception lies. They gave quite far. They gave the territories far south, far to the south of the actual McDonald line that covered even Galvan Valley. According to that claim, Galvan falls with the Chinese within the Chinese proposed boundary, but India hasn't accepted that. Now, since there is perceptual difference, we go for the Johnson line. They go beyond the McDonald line that can be at best called the Chau En-lai line that he had given in 1959. So, if we see the Galvan episode and the post 14 episode of the 15th of June, and then the Pangong issue, where things are distributed among fingers. The movement of Indian forces and Chinese forces is into, we can call that a kind of neutral area. Neutral area in the sense that India used to move from fourth to used to move up to eighth finger, and these are the hills. Fingers are just the long hills. If you have visited Ladakh, you will find that it's a wonderful, magnificent land, and with lots of gifts of nature. And from tourism point of view, I think after Jaipur, it is the second largest visited area of India. So these fingers are the hills, and you get the impression that these are the fingers, but the difference between the fingers is in 2 kilometers. India used to move up to eighth finger, and China used to come up to fourth finger. Now, these movements, these patrolling movements were overlapping in nature. Overlapping. We used to go up to eighth, they used to come up to fourth. So, what happened this time that they didn't go back after patrolling, and they raised tents in this neutral area. So if the Prime Minister Modi, when he remarked that there has been no occupation of Indian post and there has been no intrusion into Indian territory, so he was absolutely right. Since this was a neutral zone and the perceptual difference makes the perceptual difference blurs the things. It makes the things quite vague, and on cartographic images, this is very difficult to, unless we settle the things, this is very difficult to interpret. And the so many things associated with these things. We had lots of casualties, 20 Indian soldiers. But then, see, this is the huge difference between a democratic state and a communist state. They are known for Iron Curtain, and all the informations are hidden. They never pass the. I will tell you that the casualties that China suffered in 1962 war, these were disclosed by China in 1990. So the casualties which Indian media and even third state media also claim, which is around 40 to 46. Chinese media and Chinese official agencies are denying that nothing of the sort has happened. But they will reveal that after some time, Indian forces have done well, and they have fought heroically there. And China has suffered huge casualties. That's why they have been building up huge infrastructure and the military input into the area. So the coming time, it's a very crucial time. Even today, we had the information that they have introduced into the Pang area also. But let us not rely on the media reports. Whatever comes from the government sources is the reliable information. This is all, friends. Anything more if you want to discuss? I would bring one more thing that with um, this Ladakh inclusion of Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir as union territory of India, and abrogation of Article 370 and the release of the new Indian map in October last year, certain more implications for the CPEC. A huge CPEC has lots of things to do with these developments. We have to understand this. CPEC is a $62 billion project that Pakistan and China are having, and it links the Xinjiang province of China with Gwadar Airport. And since it passes through the Karakoram range and the Pak occupied Kashmir, which India claims to be its part, and India has shown it in Indian map now. It is no more a Pak occupied Kashmir. Erstwhile maps used to write Pak occupied Kashmir. We have shown it the part of Ladakh. So this is a substantial change, a significant change that the current government has brought into the Indian map, and this is the new political philosophy of India that relies on Kautilya and Kautilya and Sun Tzu, old debate. I won't go into that. That will distract us. The old, we all know Kautilya, which might be that you haven't heard about Sun Tzu. He was a Chinese, and they were contemporaries. Sun Tzu happened to be 40, 50 years before Kautilya, and they were strategic thinkers. So first time, if you want to interpret it theoretically, India has gone Kautilyan way. Our strategic culture has got some dents to bite the enemy. We have got the strong fist behind the soft glove. That is diplomatic parlance in which we talk these things. And CPEC, a $62 billion project, has huge implications for Pakistan's future. Pakistan has very little amount of it has taken on um, taken as loan from China, and they are not in position to pay even the interest. For that, they are having more loaning from international agencies, and the Pakistani economy is having a very. It is in Pakistani history at the lowest ebb. And China, since they are having hard times in South China Sea, they will have trouble in Malacca state and the other state. I am not getting the name. And since India and Australia are having a strong understanding, and Australia is offering military strategic services to India, military basement to India in Coros Island. then China is this CPEC becomes very important for China. China is worried about the future of CPEC because its work has been halted several times because of corruption charges and the Baloch resistance and so many internal dynamics of Pakistani politics. So this is having lots of impact on these current Indo-China developments, and China thinks that they have in if you see Global Times and go through the articles and opinions of Chinese political scientists and scholars, you will find that they have been interpreting the things that India has designed over Saichi now. Since India is powerful enough, since India is having a strong relationship with the United States, and India is having better equipment in many ways than China, then India has designs over Saichi. This kind of perception prevails in China. And Pakistan, they don't have individual will. They have to follow what China would dictate. And only yesterday I had, I think you must have gone through the news that more than 150,000 Chinese soldiers are there in Pakistan occupied Kashmir also. So that is something amazing. We saw the videos of Pakistani and Chinese soldiers climbing up the hills on snow-clad mountain, and Indian media men making fun of them that soldiers don't move like that. They are not soldiers; they are just movie makers. But only yesterday it was there on certain news and newspapers also that China is having strong a presence in Pak occupied Kashmir, since this is the probability that in case India and China withdraw to the pre April position in LAC, India will be free to move into Pak occupied Kashmir and capture its territory, since it is the soft belly of Pakistan. And that's why China is consolidating the territory and save. It's all the politics of CPEC, the China Pakistan Economic Corridor. So lots of implications inside, and let us hope. Let us. Another thing that is important from the Indian point of view is that in India we are having different voices. At least I won't like to mention even the events of what happened in 1962 and how different political voices behaved and what was their stand. Uh, at least over the years, decades, things have changed, and um people are expected to, in such grave situation, when our soldiers are there on borders, when every Indian is ready to fight with the deceitful enemy, let us join hands. And this is my appeal to different political wings and ideological tents that let us not play with the future of Indian state. I won't name the recent developments, the funding of certain organizations, the silence certain schools are keeping, and the silent narrative that is developing just to wait what is the aftermath of this Indo-China standoff, and we believe that this will be always in favor of India. We will be on the winning side. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.